The next presentation, by the way, before we go to the next presentation, take out the phone, complete the survey. Again, agenda, Tuesday, this presentation, survey, one quick question. Our next presentation is from our friends at the Ironworkers, and I will tell you that Kevin Hilton has been one of my closest friends and confidants and sounding boards over the many years. I told you earlier, Kurt has no preference to labor posture. We are all in this together, and just as there are different flavors of vegetables, there's different brands and types of labor brokers and labor training organizations. Kevin Hilton, thank you so much for all you've done for us over the many years, but I want to welcome to the stage now Kevin Bryanton. He's the General Secretary of the United Brotherhood of Ironworkers. And as he comes to the stage, he's going to tell us about, hey, maybe men and women really do want a career in construction, and he's going to share with you what the ironworkers and perhaps some of the other organized trades are doing to attract that vital talent. Join me in welcoming Kevin Bryanton. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg, for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here in Tucson, for real. I left Toronto Sunday morning. It was minus 24. So I always appreciate a 100-degree swing in a February location. And it's a real honor to address you as the labor guy. I bring greetings from our General President, Eric Dean, who is scheduled to be here. Fortunately, his schedule precluded that, but he wanted me to pass on his best to you on a great conference. And as a first-time attendee, I got to say it's a great conference. Really insightful and fantastic speakers. So a little bit about myself. As the General Secretary of the Ironworkers, I get to shepherd our 144 local unions through their journey of operating their locals in accordance with our Constitution. Prior to taking on that role, which has been a little bit more than a year now, I spent the previous 44 years in Canada. And along that role, I was the Canadian director for the Ironworkers and had a host of other representational roles on the provincial level in Ontario and at the local level in Toronto, which is where I got the opportunity after serving an apprenticeship and working in the trade to leave the trade to come to work there as an instructor in 1999. As part of my remarks today, I'd like to talk a little bit about our history and where we've come to in that history with the ongoing management and development of our workforce, and what we are doing at the Ironworkers Union to mitigate some of the issues that we're facing in regard to the issues that we come up on maintaining that workforce. So the Ironworkers, technically known as the International Association of Bridge, Structural, Ornamental, and Reinforcing Ironworkers, we'll stick with ironworkers for today, it's a little easier, is one of 14 unions in the building trades. And we're in about the middle of the pack in terms of the size. We have a little over 130,000 members, of which 93,000 are active in 2 countries working across Canada and the United States. And we, like many of the other building trades, got our start just before the end of the 19th century. We came together to form our union in 1896 in response to what were some pretty horrible working conditions for working people at the time. The sole focus of establishing our union was to attempt to get a decent funeral for the many people who were getting killed on the job in our industry. It wasn't for a 40-hour work week. It wasn't for double time. It wasn't for a pension plan or health care, but for a better burial for the families of our members who were getting killed on the jobs. So times have changed tremendously, and we're very thankful to be where we are today. Looking at the job of an ironworker, it covers a whole lot today, a lot more than it did when we started. We had our beginnings in the erection of structural steel to build bridges and skyscrapers, which was extremely dangerous work at the time, with absolutely no tie-off and no safety equipment that we know today. As our trade evolved, we added reinforcing steel to what we do, and those 2 aspects cover off the bulk of our hours today. We additionally install ornamental iron for stairs and handrail and a bunch of other niche products. We install curtain wall and window wall on the buildings that we build. We do a lot of work in industrial fit-outs after the actual building, inclusive of conveyor systems and a whole raft of mechanical equipment installations. In some areas, we do a lot of precast erection. And we've also moved in the last quarter century into the newer kind of energy work with a lot of solar farm and wind turbine installations. In some other areas, we do a lot of fence erection and overhead door and dock leveler installs. Some places we do a lot of jail work. We work with all the rest of the building trades on various installations and maintenance projects across all sectors of construction, and we do a lot of welding along the way, and the majority of the rigging. And our organization also has a healthy manufacturing representation across both Canada and the United States in lots of different areas, covering fabrication shops of all kinds. So that's the world of the ironworker these days. Now to switch gears and speak about developing our new ironworker talent, I want to talk about some of the challenges that we're facing and what we're doing in response to some of those challenges. So on any given day, there's an abundance of people looking for work for the first time or just entering the workforce. And there's a good chunk of those that are choosing construction, and a fraction of those are choosing ironworking. And I'll tell you that we as an organization generally do not have an issue attracting people. There have been moments in time and there are areas in our coverage where we've encountered hurdles on attracting new people. But overall, recruitment is not one of our major issues. Very few of our local unions and training centers have any sort of active recruitment program. Many of them do, though, attend local trade fairs and job fairs, but that is more for the public perception piece of our business than it is for retention. And in areas where the standard of living is higher, the organic recruitment goes up accordingly. For instance, we have over 1,000 people lining up sometimes overnight for the possibility of passing the test and getting a spot in an apprenticeship in locals in Chicago, Boston, New York City, who open up their program once a year for new apprentices. And in Toronto, the enrollment is open all year round, and they have testing every Friday. And they cumulatively, year over year, have over 1,500 attend that chance to become an apprentice. There's pretty similar stories in almost all of our major cities across Canada and the US. The organic word of mouth and referral with people that have already been in our business or know our business are our bread and butter. And so we really don't have any issues with recruitment. Our issue is retention. And here we have quite a few problems. I'll get into the specifics of some of those hurdles and what we're attempting to do to mitigate them through a few different lenses, but I'd like to speak to our apprenticeship programs first. One of the moves we made, along with all the other building trades, starting in the mid-50s through the early 70s, was to formalize what was up until then a very informal apprenticeship system. Prior to that time, we used to have a permit system where you were a member, and then when you wanted to become a member, you went to the local union and they issued you a permit that allowed you to access portions of our collective bargaining agreement in terms of getting onto the work and getting started, but you were not a member. Sometimes that took a couple of years before you worked around enough that they recognized your talent, and then they gave you a book. Now you're a member. Sometimes that took 10, 12, 14 years. Also, some things that we were doing in the same time frame, we were establishing our pension plans. And a lot of those pension plans on the early days did not include permit membership as part of that accrual of that pension. So we've made changes over time to get rid of that whole permit system within our organization. But along the time of the 50s through the 70s is when we established our apprenticeship programs to allow people to enter and become a member as an apprentice. Our organization doesn't have a apprentice active as a full dues paying member, so they participate almost fully in our local unions, but they gain membership as soon as they join. But now those programs, they manage a little over 14,000 apprentices across over 170 training centers in the United States and Canada for the ironworkers. The apprenticeship programs that we have today give someone who's new to construction the best opportunity for success in a career with us in both voluntary and compulsory trades. They can pursue one of the many types of the apprenticeships that we offer, either individually as a structural ironworker, or an ornamental ironworker, or a heavy rigging ironworker, or a reinforcing ironworker, or more holistically, a generalist apprentice for all the above. Availability of these types of apprenticeships depends on what type of a local union that the training centers are attached to, and whether it is a mixed or a specialty type of local union. The mixed local unions basically cover off the whole gamut of everything that we refer in terms of all of those facets of our trade. And the specialty types of local unions are limited in their jurisdictional scope in terms of what they cover in their agreements. We also offer interprovincial Red Seal training and certification in Canada, in addition to the JIW and other apprenticeships for the trade of welding, where it's a standalone apprenticeship for journeyperson classification and certification in some areas there. For all of our welding in the States, the U.S. locals are part of an in-house joint venture with the American Welding Society, which is a continuity-based program for certification in all of the various procedures that we carry. So the training that we offer today puts thousands of apprentices through hands-on and in-class training to get the best in-class opportunity for success in our trades. It spans anywhere from 2 to 6 years and encompasses anywhere from 2,800 to 8,000 hours of on-the-job training, and it's inclusive of anywhere from 320 to over 850 hours of in-class training in either day school, night school, or block release classes that run anywhere from 1 to 8 weeks in duration. All these apprenticeships are fantastic opportunities that are in state-of-the-art facilities, and they're all free. So given that and all that opportunity, you might wonder why we lose roughly half of the people who come our way to give our trade a shot. We wonder too, but we're working to try to fix that. But over that first year and a half that we take somebody new to construction and give them a shot in our trade, we lose anywhere from 30 to 50%. The biggest chunk of that is in the first 3 months. As we move through time, for those who stay and complete an apprenticeship, we keep about 7 in 10, roughly, of those people over the time frame it takes them to complete their apprenticeship. Once they finish the apprenticeship, retention goes up almost universally across all of our local unions at well above 90%. So although we got no issues with recruitment for people to start our trade, we have some serious issues with retention. And this is not something that's limited to the ironworkers per se, it's a common story across all of the building trades unions. We've made various moves to increase that retention because ultimately it equates to a large flush of money and time when somebody leaves, in terms of the training dollars that we commit and invest on that apprenticeship, on their training, and the similar amount of wasted human capital from everybody who touches the program across the training centers and at the local unions and also for our employers. The front-end losses are high, and they generally come back to the work itself being its own worst enemy. Whatever it was for those who came to us to give it a whirl, perception ends up colliding with reality, and it turns out ultimately to be something that they're not thinking that it was. For us, the high degree of the reason why is because they get to work at the face on the job, and it's high. You have to sign off when you want to become an ironworker apprentice on your ability to comfortably and safely work at heights. And a lot of people think that's one thing, and then they get to the job site and they're like, oh, yeah, no mas. I'm not going to handle this. I really can't do this. And so that's what a chunk of people leave ours, is they just can't handle the heights. For some, though, the work's just too physically demanding. One of the things we've tried to do to get people ready for the trade when they haven't really worked in construction before and they're brand new is to put them through, we had various names for them, but they're new to construction training sessions that run anywhere from a week to 3 weeks, in some cases up to a month, to get them ready in what we call like a gladiator course, so that they're just not completely unaware when they get to the job site. But a lot of them find, even after doing that they get there and they get a referral in the summertime and it's just too hot. and they can't handle it, or if it's in the wintertime, it's just too cold. And in some cases, the jobs are just too far to get to, and it's not what they thought it was going to be. Once we get past that initial shock of the work and we find somebody who can do it and enjoys it, there's also further reasons that split them in that first year and a half that they're members. The single most important thing that is the common that comes back to us in terms of the reason why is the lack of continuous employment. People who thought they'd be working 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year for the same company in the same location end up turning somewhere else as far as looking for work when that turns to 27 hours a week sporadically across 4 counties on 6 different job sites for multiple employers with downtimes when they're out of work. And once that work kind of dries up for more than a month or two, people who are new entrants to the trade drop out precipitously. Without the kind of base they need to survive those downtimes, they look for other opportunities and other ways of work that are more consistent. So honestly, it takes a special kind of crazy to endure it all for the totality of a career. And it even, as related in previous presentation, a more special kind of family to endure that when you're the sole breadwinner and those ups and downs come as they always do in construction. So all this is structural and incredibly hard to fix as part of what construction is, and that's basically the standard for construction in every country across the planet. The best things we can do on the front end is to try to mitigate the pratfalls of the work itself, is to educate those members on what's coming. And so we do a lot of that. But that on its own only gives them, help in the abstract, and when the work does come and slows down, the exodus becomes the norm. When they start in a boom and we have regular employment over a longer course of time, then the retention stays higher. But if they're starting at the tail end of a boom and it winds up, then they head for the door. So we lose both a lot of apprentices and journey persons that are new to the trade in that time frame when the work, if it's like extensive, we see a large exodus across the areas where we have that. So although my title says men and women do want to enter the construction trades, and they do, there's a lot of hurdles from the point at which they get started to the point at which they can look forward to a pension at the end of a career. Some of the things we've done to help mitigate that as well is to establish mentoring and peer support programs for both apprentices and journey persons who are new and working through the trades. We have these across our local unions in ad hoc ways and more formalized ways. And these give the apprentices somebody to speak to and get advice from in terms of the struggles they come across along that arc that I just described. These programs, however, require a tremendous amount of human capital. And that's over and above the standard training that we offer at our training centers. And as such, there's not a huge amount of pickup on these types of programs across all of our local unions and training centers due to staffing limitations and budget constraints. But when and where they are used, we find that they bubble up organically, and it does affect the retention, and it basically gives us about a 10-point differential on the normal kind of retention issues that we face across construction when they're actively using these kind of programs. So there's the quandary. We have no problem getting people to our door, but a tremendous issue keeping them there and getting them to stay for a career, and as such, we have a very large number of ex-members. Once we set aside the issues affecting retention that are kind of baked into the construction mix, we found that we have additional hurdles within our own organization that we discovered are somewhat cultural to that retention. On a look back through our history, the ironworker trade has been primarily a pursuit of men. We just turned 129 years ago last week. We look 70 years ago in our history, we had no women in our trade. 50 years ago, we had like a very small handful. Today, we have way less than what a normalized curve should represent as part of the demographics of working people, at a little more than 3%, and I think construction in general, as far as the union building trades, is in the midpoint of between 4 and 5%. So that number it's not a big increase when you go to any other building trade, but in our organization, it's definitely a metric that we need to start to work towards improvement upon. Over time, in that recent 35 to 50 year time frame, as our female membership grew and they encountered difficulties, they looked around the job sites and the locals, and they didn't have a lot of resources to tap, seeing as it was almost entirely men. So whenever they had those difficulties, the calls for assistance generally came into our head office. And at that time frame, we had a female researcher in our organizing department. He used to get the task of trying to sort out any of those issues. And as our female membership increased, those issues and the calls increased as well. It was in that time frame that our general president realized that having an office staff who had never worked as an iron worker attempt to answer and assist our members was not the best resource for our members. And so he hired Vicki O'Leary, a career journeyperson iron worker out of Chicago, to come on staff as our director of diversity 9 years ago. As the first female general organizer in our history, she filled a much bigger hole in our staff than we realized. The voice that creating her position gave to our female members allowed her to work with them and fully quantify some of the ingrained cultural issues within our trade that were additional barriers to retention of our members. Over the course of her early work, she uncovered issues around harassment that organizationally we were not noting. She also found that poor treatment of women and new people to the trade, although not universal, were pervasive in a lot of our areas. The work that she was doing to tackle these issues was ongoing in the time frame where a young female carpenter named Udi Hicks was killed on a job in California by a coworker on Valentine's Day in 2017. I have a video clip that I'm going to run that speaks to where we are and where it took us in terms of that particular instance and what developed out of that. So hopefully this works.
Deputies say Aaron Lopez used an object to kill 32-year-old Udi Hicks.
Lopez was working with his co-worker moving scaffolding into a truck. But shortly after they were finished, something happened that led to the deadly confrontation. Hicks was a mother of 3. She was a hard worker with a great attitude, according to those who worked with her in the carpenter's apprenticeship program.
He was a day laborer, he wasn't a union laborer. And in talking to ironworker women about that incident, I asked them if they were ever afraid on the job other than the work that they actually do. And all of them resoundingly said yes. So with that, I came up with the Be That One Guy. Be That One Guy is about empowering the men that are on the jobs that are really good guys to be a good guy. And it doesn't matter if they tell somebody to knock it off when they're being a jerk, or whether it's just by deflecting and talking about the game last night. It's just important that the bully that's on a job knows that other people are calling them out and that they know that it's not acceptable and that they're not going to put up with it.
I want to be that one guy.
So that moment in time galvanized the work that Vicki was doing and prompted her to establish the Be That One Guy program. The program revolves around calling out and putting an end to job site bullying and harassment. That did not go. Okay. Can we get a slide advance on that? It's not working. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Okay. Gonna go back one. There we go. All right. The green button was not working for a moment. It aspires to do the work that needs to be undertaken by all of our members to make a job referral for a new or newer person a safe space, physically and emotionally, when they arrive at the job site. On the safety file, and it was been spoken to previously by the previous, he actually said the words that I'm going to speak to in terms of our moniker for safety. But we've worked actively for over 25 years in our organization to try to develop a culture of safety amongst our members. where we can get to a day that turns into a week, and then a month, and then hopefully a year where we have 0 incidents and 0 fatalities. Our previous General President, Walter Wise, championed this as part of his legacy, and we've never gotten to that point. We've gotten pretty close. I think a couple of years ago, we only had 2 fatalities on the job site. But we continue to drive home when it comes to safety on the job, that if you see something, say something. Get all workers through that day in the same shape that they showed up, and then continue doing that every single day, year over year. Through the work that Vicki did in conjunction with the Be That One Guy training, we found that we needed to organizationally shift to recognize that this way of thinking like we did about safety and getting a member through that day in their physical space around the job site and all the pratfalls of safety that could be in their way. Needed also to consider the space a person occupies as a new hire, not just physically, but also as a space where every single member has the right to be free from harassment and to experience the full potential of what they have to offer in the pursuit of that trade in the space that they have when they arrive on the job. The work that Vicki did let us know that our culture was a big reason why some of the people were leaving. And it was not limited to our sister members. Many members, regardless of gender, were heading elsewhere because of the environment on the job site of the people. And it was, basically averse to what they wanted in a workplace. It was one of those kind of moments where you don't really know what you're looking for until you ask the right questions in our business. And now that we know, we have been actively tackling the issue and doing our level best to educate our members and bring an end to any workplace harassment and bullying. Vicki put together the Be That One Guy training and has trained trainers across all of our unions to deliver the one-day classes to all classifications of our members. This training continues across all of our local unions and has been extremely assistive in tackling unconscious and conscious bias that lead to harassment on the job. And it ultimately has led to a better workplace for new entrants to come to and increased our retention accordingly. I'm going to play a short video as an excerpt from some of the training in that one-day training that we have developed. There we go.
It's awareness, self-awareness, and being inclusive of everybody on the job, because we need all the hands we can get to build the stuff we're building.
If the job goes well, we make money, we can bid on another project and try and keep everybody employed.
A small joke is a small joke, but when you push it beyond that, it's no longer acceptable.
The big 5, and that's rude, lewd, or crude jokes, anything about religion, race, gender, sexuality, politics. When you get into that, you've already stepped into a place that you shouldn't be.
If you see any type of harassment, stop the harassment. Somehow intervene.
Make sure you can communicate with your business manager, your superior, your job steward. I think you will be able to resolve things quicker instead of leaving everything accumulate.
If the foreman or the super is the problem, we as a union will address the problem.
And it doesn't have to be someone with a white hard hat. It can be an apprentice. It just takes the one person.
If you are going in conjunction with somebody else to make somebody oppress, you're also guilty.
If you ignore it, and then how are you going to feel if something happens?
If you're an in-your-face kind of person and you don't actually have inhibitions about walking up to somebody and telling them to knock it off, that works. Or you can tell them that, hey, that joke felt inappropriate, but you're still directly talking to the aggressor.
Just approaching that person and saying, are you okay today? And stating the issue, that their behavior is an issue.
Ask a question, you can distract from the situation. You can go in and say, hey, I need a hand with this. You don't necessarily have to directly intervene.
Delegating. We can walk up to somebody and say, hey, I don't really feel comfortable. Would you walk with me and help me take care of this situation? And having that person that maybe is perceived as having more power could walk with you and do something.
The people that have the moral courage, the people who are centered, right, and grounded, they need to be the ones who speak up to put an end to it.
We need to be able to represent anybody who wants to become a construction worker and give them a safe place to actually flourish and then practice that trade to become a tradesperson. Or it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, your race is, your sexuality is, your gender is.
Treat the people that you're dealing with like they're family.
We need to just treat people with respect just for them simply being a human being.
They have to be accepting that things are changing and that we do have the same training, we do have the same skills, and we know that we have to show up every day and be the best we can be to help that change move along.
They want to learn. So you tell them why they're doing a task, why you do it this way. I'm gonna show you how I do it, and then I'm gonna sit back and I'm gonna watch you do it. And then I'm gonna coach you along your way, and you'll find your way of doing it.
When they do have an issue and they come to you with it, believe them. Take it seriously.
It's up to us to create that culture of acceptance, but it starts with the general membership.
So we have some outstanding training that we have developed that is going on across our organization on these issues. But ultimately, as it's just stated, it comes down to respect. And no worker needs malice in the mix of attempting to do their work. It goes against what we stand for as a union. It hurts our retention, and it's just wrong. The Be That One Guy model has been picked up by other trades in their own development of like programs within the building trades. And it's something that we are extremely proud of as an organization. And it's not like that's the pervasive element on every single job with every single worker across our unions. It's just that on any given day, there's 75,000 to 90,000 people working, and some people are doing stupid shit. And we have to, as an organization, stand up against that. And I bring it up today to speak about it just because it's not a real vogue thing to talk about these days, but it's something that we are going to continue to work on. More work on Vicki and what she did. Another outcome of her coming on board, oops, jump ahead. Go back. There we go. Another outcome of her coming on board was to give voice to female members having to make decisions around continuing to pursue their trade or pursue a family. Once again, it was another issue that we didn't really know about until we started asking. But we had a member who was trying to juggle both, and it was in her third trimester, and she miscarried because of the work and some of the things that working in our trade does with harnesses and wearing harnesses and being in that work. And in response to her struggle and the voice of many other female members in similar situations, we came up with an industry first in the United States amongst the building trades by establishing a maternity leave program benefit through our labor management trust based on the work that Vicki did in the same time frame. So the benefit is prescribed by the member's physician and can include up to 2 trimesters of leave prior to the due date of the child, and up to 2 months postpartum as far as the coverage of the benefit. There are some qualifiers in terms of what you need. You have to be in insurance through the local union and have a minimum of 100 hours worked in the previous 3 months prior to applying, and you can only use it every couple of years. But it is a benefit of $800 a week, and for the 15 states that provide paid benefit leave, it's paid over and above less whatever that is in terms of that $800 amount. But for every other state that doesn't have it, it's something that we're pretty proud of as well. And it has allowed hundreds of our sisters to safely make the journey to parenthood while completing their work as an ironworker. So big thank you to Vicki, and she's here, for doing some of the great work that she's done across both of our countries and one of the hardest jobs that we have. So if you have any questions for Vicki, please talk to her about it after the break today, because I think you said you're leaving tonight. A couple more items I want to share that we're working on. We also have members that run the gamut of what they want to do as a worker and then decide to try to make a go of it running that work as a contractor. There's quite a few of our contractors who started out and completed their work as a tradesperson and then decided to make that switch, either after working in supervision for somebody else, getting to the higher point of being a PM, finding out how much money the guy is making, and then decided to give it a go. Some leave to do it outside of our world. We wish them the best. But for those who stay within it and become a signatory contractor, our labor management program, I'm going to say the acronym now. It's called IMPACT, but it's the Ironworker Management Progressive Action Cooperative Trust, another mouthful. Our labor management program has set up, much similar to our apprenticeship programs, a whole raft of training that is available for that brand new contractor or the contractor who wants to get some more help, what we call a contractor college. And much like our apprenticeship system, this is all provided free to our contractors. So I'm going to run through the gamut of it. It's quite a few pages here, but I'll just touch on, I think there's 32 courses to date that are available along topics on business fundamentals, business administration, project management, field supervision, leadership courses, there's quite a few on those. Communications courses, some technical and technology courses, lean construction, and then there's a whole host of webcast series for those who want to attend remotely if they're having issues trying to make the classes that cover off another whole raft of topics. And then we additionally have a bunch of e-learning courses that they can take. And as well, they have some contractor development courses and succession planning and harassment awareness as well. So our good friend Kevin Hilton is here. So catch him in the hall if you want to speak to any more of those items. But there is a ton of stuff that we've developed through our labor management along with our contractors to help our brand new people who are entering as a signatory contractor make a go of it. Okay. As an organization, we focus on the retention of our members, but we also focus on the health of our relationship with our signatory contractors. One of our commitments to that end was to establish our own internal guide for our members in terms of the two-way street of dignity in the workplace and respect for on-the-job action. We adopted what we call the Ironworker Standards of Excellence, and a lot of other building trades have done the similar activities. And it's a code of conduct for our members and what they're expected to attend to ensure that our employers have a floor of expected conduct on the job on which to rely. I won't read them out, but they're listed there, and they have included with them progressive enforcement at the local union level for where and when a member strays off course. And they're also included in every single one of our local union operational bylaws. They cover off quite a few facets of the job face, but the most consistent theme, once again, is respect. And we look at our labor management world within the ironworkers as a partnership in success, and we expect our members to do the same. The last couple items I want to touch on are collaborative. Our most senior leadership is cultivated an ongoing conversation with owners, clients, and builders, along with our contractors, to forecast all the many projects, the mega projects, and everything that's coming across the land, to try to assure them that we'll do whatever we can to meet the needs for craft supply for the work that they have. Part of that's about getting the people there. Part of that's about making sure that they're healthy and able to do the work. That includes physical health, but more and more it deals with mental health as well. So the previous presentation was right on point to a lot of the things that we're working on in our organization. Another thing that we continue to work through Impact with our employers is to try to tackle issues around the recent upticks that we have seen and experienced in both mental health and substance misuse issues in both countries. We've landed on a program through our labor management trust called Credible Mind as a resource in that ongoing work. But we use quite a few different things across the diaspora of our local unions in both countries to try to attend to that. But the first step in that work for us, and one of the harder things, was destigmatizing issues around mental health and substance abuse issues. And then the next steps, obviously, are to try to get the members the help they need. And we have done a lot of advancement through our health and welfare trusts to try to add programs and capacities to service both our members and our contractors. Because when we take a look back over the last 4 or 5 years to how many members we have lost to on-the-job fatalities and compare that number to the number of members that we have lost as an organization due to mental health issues and overdose, it's a horrific comparison. All the people we have lost are one too many. And so our collaborative work continues as it's something that affects both our members and our employers and that we're dealing with everywhere. So in that vein, the local unions have done some outstanding work in terms of trying to attend to the individual nuances of recognizing, accepting, and then helping a member. And in some cases, that means treatment facilities where the member goes for rehab and what they do when they come out of it. And this is an issue. We have a lot of recidivism in those areas because they go right back to the work face where there is a lot of drug use and there's a lot of drug availability, or there's just an attitude where alcohol can be consumed in and around the job or after the job. And so some of our locals have set up sober gangs and sober companies to send people to when they come out of rehab so they have a better chance of making a go of it. And so they're really doing some outstanding work across the local unions individually to attend to those. But we appreciate, in that vein, like-minded employers who emphasize that holistic safety and have their own culture of achieving that in the dignity of the workplace. So thank you to all those employers for their continued commitment, for taking good care of our people in a holistic way when they attend work every day. The last thing I want to talk about is on behalf of our General President, his commitment and our commitment as an organization to getting you, the signatory contractors, and the people who engage with us, the people that you need to complete the work. As has been mentioned in previous panels and presentations, a lot of our work has moved from the big cities to areas which we got fairly light coverage in terms of the local unions, scant membership across the geographies. Mega projects in more remote areas are kind of becoming the new normal in the last while. When we look at our overall work hours and compare them to the pre-pandemic normal, we're pretty much right at the same spot as we were pre-pandemic, at a little more than 10 million hours a month. But almost exclusively, there's no crane swinging in big cities. The commercial high-rise market is just crickets everywhere. And a lot of the demand is in areas that we've never seen work at the size of scope that we see today. We have a whole lot of that across the United States, but I'm going to focus in on Columbus, Ohio as just a poster child for that. Local 172 for us is a mid-sized local union with pretty solid coverage across their area in terms of the work sectors that they have and their membership generally working. Probably running maybe 15% unemployment, so that's pretty good for a local union, fairly normal. And then they get an Intel chip plant. Huge. It can be anywhere. If it goes fully, it's going to be over $20 billion worth of investment in that area. And they got a ginormous data center at the same time, just pulling up and rolling out in the field. So they've got all their work that's ongoing, and then this happens. So the local taps out all the adjacent availability of those who will travel from the nearby local unions. They put out a national call through our international way of trying to attract people, and they're still looking for a ton of people. What do we do now in this situation? I'm sure that's a common story for those of us who are in signatory relationships with building trades, that they're sick of hearing as far as what happens to big jobs when they come up. But for us, we're going to roll back the tape on time a couple years. And our general president's and those conversations and those relationships that he's built is aware of what's coming and is having conversations with Columbus and all of our other local unions and speaking to them openly about what they're planning on doing when that work comes. And to see where they're at in terms of their own abilities to supply those jobs. And he knew that some of them that were relying upon calls to other local unions as far as the boomer fill that really weren't going to get answered. And as part of that planning, he set up our first national local union, which has 100% coverage of the United States, that we refer to as the Traveler Local. Local 845. This local union was set up through our organizing department and run by one of our campaign coordinators, Chad Rink. And it was set up primarily to fill the holes of craft supply that our general president premised was coming and ultimately did arrive. Chad and his staff had put together over 6,000 ex-members and skilled tradespeople who were unrepresented across the United States, who were interested in traveling if the conditions were ripe. Those conditions came to fruition in more than a dozen areas across the United States in the last 2 years. And I use Columbus because they were the first to get seriously outstripped in the traditional ways that they usually work to fill the calls. I'm going to run through some of the places that we've fed people through that local. On the Columbus Local 172, they were seriously light on reinforcing rod workers on that Intel job site. So we referred 130 reinforcing rod workers. The NRG power shutdown, we had 10 iron workers sent there. Down in Florida, in Cape Canaveral, they got light. In NASA, we referred 45 structural iron workers, welders, and riggers. A small complement was assistive in the SSAB shutdown, where we sent 6. Back to Columbus again. On the Honda plant, we had 100 ironworker millwright types referred through 845. At the SLC airport job, we sent 30 structural ironworkers and welders. And then across Columbus, in terms of the other contractors outside of the big mega jobs, we had referred over 200 structural ironworkers and welders. So we didn't just cover the mega projects with all the overtime. We made sure that the employers who've been cashing checks in the area for 30 years did not go light in their jobs either. And I spoke a lot about retention, and if you're wondering about the retention of how we were received in terms of those employers and who was referred through Local 845 in this project, we had sent over 600 in and around the Columbus area over time, and only had 7, I think, pushed back from the employer as not being able to do what they were sent for. So that retention has been extremely successful in terms of our pickup. It's been extremely successful in terms of the employer's ability to complete that work. And the locals, the employers like it more than the locals in terms of what it is and the kind of standard way we've been running our business for the last 129 years. But the locals appreciate it in terms of that ability to carry on with the work. And so we will continue to do that. Many of the people that were dispatched through that traveler local have since transferred from Local 845 into the local unions where they're doing the work. So the model's working very well for the ironworkers in terms of that ongoing workforce development and the promise that we're trying to make in terms of keeping our employers covered up with people when they call for them as they do the work. So that about wraps up what I wanted to talk about today. I'm happy that I had the chance to talk about all things ironworking with you. A lot of you may know that already, but as the first time attendee to this conference, it was kind of a brand new experience for me, so I kind of hit the gamut on what I wanted to talk about. But I really appreciate the opportunity. I thank you for your kind attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. And we do have a couple of questions. Number one, I am struck by your candor and transparency. You know, a lot of times organizations will stand up and share all the positives, but you've kind of let us...
There are a lot of positives, too.
There are,
but
I will tell you, just your candor and your transparency and the admission of some of these challenges is very refreshing, and we do appreciate it. We do acknowledge it. So a couple of questions. Number one, can you comment a little bit more about your mentor-peer support and how it affects productivity and safety?
I was looking at it more from the perspective of how people get through the downturns and how that affects our retention. But in terms of just having somebody who is assigned to you and is going to assist you, if they're on the job with you, obviously that's helpful directly, but if they're, in some cases, they're just your peer support person to call when you're having issues, that helps you, because when you're struggling, regardless of whether it's because of lack of work and financial issues that you're unprepared for, or if it's a mental health issue that you're having or somebody in your family's having, that's white noise that takes you away from your full ability to attend that job phase safely. And so if you have somebody to talk to about that, then it gives you some way to clear that white noise and get back to the work that you're trying to do safely. So, I mean, I can speak to that from that perspective, is that it gives you something that will make you safer on the job site because you have a way to take care of that white noise.
Another question is, what do you feel the owner responsibility or the contractor's responsibilities might be in the retention area? What would you expect the ideal owner or the ideal contractor to be supporting you on?
Well, the ideal contractor also really respects dignity in the workplace and everything that encompasses, you know. And they'll have a safety of culture that we're lockstep with them in trying to maintain. As an organization, we have members who are still believing it's 1950 and they can just have safety-free Friday every day of the week. But for contractors that really focus in on safety and really focus in on creating a safe space for everybody to work, both physically and emotionally, over the course of that work, that responsibility is something that we really appreciate. So,
have you considered some sort of repository where if the ironworking trade seems different than what they expected, they could be referred to other trades so we retain the interest in construction?
That happens a lot, actually. Some people were kind of torn as to where they wanted to start, and so they end up, we internally refer people within the building trades unions to other local unions all the time to give them a whirl. If they're really good at construction, they just can't handle the heights, and there's a host of other trades to choose from that we can refer them to and do. And a lot of them end up, some of them becomes millwrights, some of them become, they're really good welders, some of them go become a pipe fitter or a steam fitter, and or another trade with a lot of welding. So we do a lot of that internal referral as a matter of fact. So,
tell us more about the sober gang, sober company concept.
Do you want to talk to him?
We can get your microphone.
We have Mike from
we've got
Boston
one right
area here, and he's with our labor management
Sure.
trust as a
Great,
regional
thank you.
director, but he was previously the manager in Boston, and that's where a lot of that I'm speaking to comes from. So.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
So my name is Mike Hess. As they said, former manager in Boston for the Ironworkers. What we were doing in Boston was we were seeing an uptick in suicides, substance abuse. So what we did was, back in the day, there was a couple of retirees that started an AA meeting that was hosted at the Union Hall that helped people come in and just talk about what's going on in their life, or just try to get help from a mentor that's in the field that's going through the same issues that they're going through. It started to pick up momentum. It started off slow. Guys don't want to come in. They don't want to see the business agents. They don't want to see the managers, that they're struggling. Hey, I can't get referred out because I have issue X, Y, and Z. So we kind of took that stigma down. In some of our offices, we're going through some issues, and they've been open about it. We talk about it. It's open at union meetings. We have an EAP that comes in and talks to the apprentices. We get them on day one so that when they come into the program, they know that there's a safe place that they can go and talk to somebody. The EAPs, we go out to the job sites. We have job site stand downs. All the building trades get together. We'll go out and address the issues that are going on the job sites. The GCs are involved. The owners are bought in. Some of the contractors that we have, Karras is one of them. They have a program called the Phoenix program. And what they do is, if you go through a detox, or if you're struggling, you can reach out, and what they'll do is they'll bring you into their workforce and put you in a gang where it's safe. You can open up to the people that you're working with. You don't have to worry about, hey, that guy's a junkie, he's no good, he's not gonna show up to work. They kind of beat that stigma back. So you need to buy in on all ends. The GCs in Boston are bought in, the contractors are bought in, the membership's bought in, so we've seen a big uptick in help. So that's kind of where it's at. But if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to me, I'll be here for the next couple of days, so thank you.
Great, thank you for that response, we appreciate it. Another question is, what new technologies are improving the working conditions for the iron worker?
Well, the biggest one in the last 35 years is the Zoom boom, as far as our ability to access the workface working at heights and not have to climb erection ladders or columns to get there. Equipment is evolving just to make things a lot safer in terms of the fall arrest that is available and the various kinds of retractables that are available in terms of our most dangerous work, which is setting deck. So there's been a lot of really good increases in terms of how a harness works and how that fall arrest equipment is easily accessible and not part of a potential trip hazard itself in terms of accessing the work. It's not really technology, but it's like the development over time of equipment that makes our work a lot safer and easier to do. So.
Super, thank you for that. Finally, I just want to also recognize that these standards of excellence, the codes of excellence that started, I think, with the electricians and under the Mark Ayers leadership, CURT Tripartite Initiative, and I've talked to Kevin about that, was once the organization, well, really seeded the clouds on those kinds of things: jurisdictional dispute resolution, codes of excellence, absenteeism policies that many of the trades have addressed. Joe Hunt was a big leader in that some years ago. And so it's really good to see this on the screen, things that we have seeded the clouds for 10 years ago. And I think they can only improve the attractability of our industry. Again, I'm struck by the fact that 10 years ago we would have been talking about the quality of the training program and all the training centers and the training protocols, and all that's good. But boy, from both Greg Sizemore and you, Kevin, the emphasis has now been on the whole person and the culture and the resources available and body, mind, soul, spirit balance. And it's really refreshing to see where this is going to go, and we really commend both the ABC and ironworkers and the other organized trades for taking a leadership role in promoting the attractability of the construction industry. So Kevin, thank you once again for an outstanding presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.